Welcome to my podcast, Extraordinary with Neman. My name is Neman, and I'm your host. I want to be the first one to wish you a very happy new year, 2025, and I'm very excited for what this year is going to bring for all of us. I wish you a lot of health, a lot of happiness, and a lot of wealth, okay? It's going to be a very good year. Let's claim it all right now. But I also want to reflect on 2024. It is the year I started my podcast, and I just want to express so much gratitude for everyone who supported me in this project that I just started out of love. I want to give huge shout out to Chicago Podcast Studios for hosting me over here. Absolutely wonderful experience. If you're ever thinking about starting your own podcast, Chicago Podcast Studio is the way to go. Just lovely people, always working really hard to make sure my podcast looks good. You have seen little intro, logo, all that situation was created by them, so they can do all of that for you. So Carlton and Tom, thank you so much. I want to thank every guest that was on this podcast and made it so extraordinary. We heard some incredible, really extraordinary stories. I just so speechless when I'm reflecting of just incredible people that we had over here. And last but not least, Hair Salon Casablanca for always cutting my hair before my podcast episodes and making sure that I always look good over here. I make joke and saying just younger and younger from episode to episode. So thank you for that too. And absolutely thank you for just tuning in. We started a little rocky, but ended up with a lot of views, downloads, and a lot of people tuning in into the podcast. So each and every of you means the world to me. So thank you for that. And with all of that being said, let's go into the incredible conversations of 2025. And I'm so excited to start this year with learning a lot. One of my goals for 2025 is just to educate myself more on a lot of different topics. And this is for the very first time that I'm actually having a conversation with a neuroscientist, but she's also a yoga instructor and content creator and does a lot of incredible things that we're gonna get to learn together. So please, let's welcome Mecca.
Oh, I love it.
Hi, Mecca.
Hello.
Mecca Islam, right?
Yes, Mecca Islam.
Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. I'm glad I'm here.
I love having you here. You're not originally from Chicago, but
No.
you spent some time here.
I'm originally from Philadelphia, and then I went to undergrad in D.C. Shout out to Howard University, and then I moved to Chicago for grad school at Northwestern. So I've been here for 10 and a half years.
How you like Chicago?
It's cold right now.
So, you lived here for 10 winters.
I love Chicago. It's been great because it's like I grew here. Like when I moved here, like, your 20s is you're still a beginning of an adulthood, right? So I'm like, I was a baby.
Oh.
And now I'm a true adult. As my mom liked to say, you grown.
Chicago will do that to you.
Chicago will sure enough do it.
Sometimes I always feel like I'm a little bit younger than I actually am. And often I don't feel like adult at all. But sometimes like I'm somewhere in Chicago on a highway driving with my car and things. I was like, it's like adult life, stuck in traffic.
Like I'm adulting today? Oh, wow. When did that happen? I was just 15.
I know, right? And in my mind, I still am. But it will happen like that I'm just like reflecting on like, oh, like I really grew up in this city. And like for me, it's been a decade too. Like actually, January 20th now of 2025 will be exactly 10 years since I arrived. I landed January 20th, 2015 in the worst time.
In the winter,
But the winters were so different. Yeah. Winters were full of snow. I remember from January till like April, it was snow. I had to go, and I came with so little money. I came and I didn't have any money. And the first thing I needed to do, I needed to buy winter boots, which like are expensive, you know?
No one tells you how much winter gear costs.
I know.
As an adult, because you're like, my mom used to pay how much for this?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I just like, landed and like I don't have money and now I have to like buy all of these things. But now, like how time passes by, I feel like Chicago is just getting less and less snow from year to year. It just shows that climate change is so real that like we can see it.
You can see it and you can feel it. Like the temperature changes significantly changed in the past, like what? Not even a year. Like think about 2 years ago, we had a lot of snow in February and it was really cold.
Yeah.
Last February was a joke. Like, is that really?
I know, right? Like one cold week and the winter's over.
It wasn't below zero. What?
I know. But anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit more about your life before Chicago, okay? And if you have seen any of my podcast episodes, I like to go all the way back to basically your first memories, and I just want to know what do you remember first, and like where did you grow up? Who was in the house? How many family members? Tell me all about your childhood.
So I am one of, technically it's 13 of us. I'm one of 13 between my parents. So I like to say my parents were like the Brady Bunch. When they each got married, they each had 3 kids. My dad had 3 boys, and my mom had 1 girl and 2 boys. And my siblings were actually in high school together at the same high school, which is kind of crazy. And they met at the mosque. And then they had me. They had Mecca, and then 14 months later, they had Medina. And then my parents got a divorce like around I was like 2, and my dad remarried and had 4 more. And then we have
and did your mom?
No, my mom. I don't think that.
So
was
that comes to total. That's
done.
3 and 3 and 2 and 4.
Yeah.
That comes to 13.
So we have 3 and 3. So it was 6 before me, my sister. Then it was 7 and 8. Then 9, 10, 11, 12. I share a birthday with number 9. 10, 11, and 12 are Gen Z.
Okay.
And then 13, she's 9.
Ah, okay.
I have a 9-year-old.
Okay. Oh my goodness, a lot of kids. And so, but basically, your first kid of your
Both my parents.
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
So they were like, they had my sister and I like to say like I was the first girl. So like I was the first like biological girl, and they were like, "Oh my God, we have a sister." I was like, so the joke is like I'm not called a nickname. I'm called baby girl. Like my brother's like, "Yeah, baby girl, go get this." I'm like.
Yeah.
I'm 32, baby girl.
Well, yeah. Well, the first sister and stuff. You know what? I'm a middle child. I have an older brother and a younger brother. But my younger brother will forever be baby. It's just so weird. Yeah. And he's like grown up with a wife and 2 kids.
You're like, you're still my baby.
But he is still 13 years old to me. Like, it's just,
It's crazy because like I was talking about how like when you leave, the idea of what your siblings are when you left and how they look. Like when I went to college, my youngest sibling was 8 and the ones right above it, they just started high school. So I'm like, when I got to see him as an adult, it was been really interesting. But I'm like, you were just 8 years old asking me to watch you do everything. Like, Mecca, you watch me do this? And I'd just be like, yeah. And now you're like 21. Wait, when did this happen?
Your name Mecca, it's beautiful.
Thank
I really
you.
like it. Can you tell me like more about it?
Yeah.
Like who came up with that idea?
So my dad in the 80s, this is the story. When my parents got married, my dad had a list of names and he was like checking them off. And my dad met this woman in the 80s who had twin daughters, one named Mecca, one named Medina. He was like, I gotta have twins. The next kids are going to be twin girls named Mecca and Medina. We are not twins, but we're 14 months apart, so as close as we can get.
He worked hard to get what he wanted.
And so the joke was that when my mom was pregnant with me, she came back from the ultrasound. They were like, say either Mecca or Medina when you walk in, Mecca or Muhammad when you walk in, and that will be the name of the baby. Like that would be the idea of what gender I was. And I was like, they're like Mecca, and my brothers lost it because I'm their baby sister. So it's quite funny because I'm like, yeah, no, my dad had a plan.
For people who don't know, tell us about actual Mecca and Medina.
Yeah, so I'm named after the holy city Mecca, which is the city in which the Muslims make pilgrimage to. once a year. It's part of our 5 pillars. You have to do it once in your life if you can afford to. And so it's funny, actually, my dad went to make Hajj, which is the pilgrimage, the year I was born. And they found out they had Medina 5 months later. And they were like, wow, this is like a blessing because now I went to Medina already. I went to visit Mecca and I went to Medina. And so Medina is the second city, a holy city. It's called the Prophet's City because it was the Prophet, peace supposed to be upon him, the city where he sought refuge when he was cast out of Mecca. And so like the two cities are very different and like, and I think that's how like my sister and I were like, we are sisters. I don't think we look alike, but we're very different, and that's just like how the cities were. So it was like the perfect name. I can't think of being called anything else.
Do kids get taught in the school about Mecca and Medina over here? Because for us, we do. Like I knew about 2 holy cities, Mecca and Medina, and it was kind of mandatory for us to learn. But I don't know anything about United States education. When people tell me like, oh, this was like in 3rd grade, I was like, what? I don't know what 3rd grade means. So I was wondering, like, when it comes to education, is it something that like average American would know about Mecca and Medina?
I think now it's a lot more easier because of like just
internet.
But growing up, no. So like I went to a private Islamic school until I was 13. 15. And we've learned all this, but you had like my entire family is not Muslim. So my extended family learned what things were with the children that came along. And when we learned it, we were like, yeah, no, that's what I'm named after. Get it right. And it was just stuff like that. And honestly, in high school, even in college, I would have to educate people. In high school, I wore traditional wear, so I wore a bias and I wore my hijab, and like my mom was like, this is her uniform. And I had friends who like Philadelphia is a really Muslim city, so like super Muslim friendly, but it was a lot of people who still didn't know. So I'd be like, yeah, no, I can't do that because it's about to be Ramadan in the summer, so I can't do this because of that, and I don't do this because of this, and this is what we really believe. And it's also around the time like I was in high school in 2006, so it's not that far after everything happened in the world. And so a lot of my childhood, like in high school, teen years into college, was like, yeah, no, this is what it is and this is what it isn't. And just like breaking stigmas that a lot of people had around Islam and around Muslims. And like outside of Philadelphia, no one really was like, oh, I know a lot of Black American Muslims. Was like, no, I don't. I was like, oh, yeah, no, hi.
Yeah. So your mom is Muslim,
Both
and your father too. So who is not then? Because you said not everyone is Muslim. How come then?
My dad became Muslim in the 60s. He came Muslim at 13. And he had a rough childhood, so he came Muslim around that time. And it was his safe place.
So he wasn't born and it something Muslim. He accepted. Okay,
later
so he
on.
accepted Islam.
And my mom became Muslim in the 80s.
Okay, so she also accepted Islam later in life.
Later in life. No, but she had 2 brothers who were Muslim, and they were like, you Muslim too? And she's like, or no. But she became Muslim. And yeah, and then like we're now 3 generations deep. Like I've been an aunt since I was 6. So we now have like the youngest, I think, nephew or nibbling niece or nephew that I have is like 1. And it's like almost 20 of us. Of the next generation. So it's really beautiful watching it grow.
Well, now a little information that I have about you, it's becoming so much more interesting to me as you're telling me this story, because I know that you speak Arabic, and it was actually your first language. You spoke it even before you spoke English. And now why I find that so interesting is because I always thought it comes from family. Like, oh, if you speak a different language, it's mostly because it's coming from family and things. But now knowing that your mom actually wasn't born in any of the Arab countries, or she didn't have a mom and dad who spoke Arabic, but just accepted Islam in certain point of their life and then get a kid and made sure that they speak Arabic as a first language, it's commitment.
She was not playing games. Like, and I tell people, you can look here. I tell people, I was like, all of my knowledge, I'm so thankful. Everything that came to me in terms of who I am and how I think is all because my mother fostered that. And it wasn't easy. She was a single mother for a good portion of my life. So like this wasn't easy for her to do, but she made that commitment. When they got married, she told my dad, like, whatever kids we have are going to know the religion for themselves. And she said, I'm going to stick to this. And she did. The reason why Arabic became my first language, and everyone's like, well, how? It's not really, even my siblings, they're like, yeah, no, them too. But the rest of us, maybe not. It's because she made sure that I was immersed. So I went to like, my first words, when you say mother, I didn't say mother. I said ummi. I still call my mom ummi to this day, which means my mother in Arabic. My dad, I still call my dad abu, which is father in Arabic. Yeah. So like even the little small things of mom and dad, like, no, I said ummi and abu. I learned my alphabet and everything because I was like, how schooling
went. You also know how to write?
Yeah.
Oh my God, because that's much more complicated.
That's more complicated. So I speak Fusha, which is Quranic Arabic, and then I had to learn another dialect when I got to college. But I spoke and wrote, like when I speak Arabic, I don't have an accent. I have a Saudi or accent more so because of what I had to learn, Fusha. And so people were like, oh, well, how? I was like, well, my mother made sure. She was like, all right.
But was she fluent in?
She had everyone around her who was.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering, like, how does mother teach a kid like as a first language that she doesn't speak?
So she's an educator. So my mom has her master's in education, like in early childhood education. She has her bachelor's. She has multiple degrees. She has her PhD in education, and she got that when I was in high school. And her thing was that I may not have it, but I know people who do. And so even the story of why I learned Quran and how I was able to recite so well. I was in competitions with like all people who were generationally native speakers. My mother would have them speak to me. Like the story of why I'm able to, her reason why she thinks that I'm able to speak so well and be able to like jump in languages, because when I was a newborn, her friend from the masjid, he was Egyptian, would be one of the only few people in the entire world that I would let touch me. I didn't like, you weren't my older brother, my dad, my grandmother, and my mom. Don't touch me. But him, I would. And he would hold me and walk me around and recite Arabic to me and just talk to me in Arabic the entire time. And so when it came to grade school, I would be having Arabic at school, English at home. And my mom speaks broken Arabic. And so like she'll talk to me, like we'll make sure that she had the books, she had the, like back when CDs were still the thing, CD-ROMs, I only watched Arabic little television shows and movies. And that was her mission. So by the time I got to kindergarten, I was able to be like, I had an interview for the school, and they were like, okay, we're going to take her and interview her without your like parents so we could see where we're going to place her. I was interviewing for pre-K. I was 4, sorry. And the interviewer comes back out. My mom was like, what's wrong? He was shocked. And he was like, she's like asking me what language I want her to say her alphabet and her numbers in. And she looked at me like, do you want it in Arabic or English? And I told her both. And she said it both to me up to 20 in both. So we're going to put her in first grade. Mom's like, she's 4. I know she's tall, but she's 4. You're going to keep her in kindergarten at that. And that was it. And similarly to my sister, who was right below me. And that was it. And then
your sister is also fluent in Arabic?
Yeah, but she's actually lived in an Arabic-speaking country. I haven't. She lived in Dubai.
I lived in Doha, but I'll tell you about it.
She lived in Dubai. Well, my mom lived in Dubai. She lived in Sharjah. And she went to school. She did a study abroad there. But our dialects are different because of like, even though we're 2 years apart, it's a slight change in how we speak Arabic as well. But yeah, we can read and write, speak it. And I learned when I got to college, I TA'd the Arabic class. I was like, this is going to be an ECA. I'm just going to be Arabic. And I TA'd it.
And you said in your school, you were also taking classes in Arabic, right?
We had 3 Arabic classes. We had reading, we had Arabic writing, and then we had Quran. And we had them alternating. So from elementary age to middle school, I was at one Islamic school where like they didn't play. We wrote, we had recitation, and then I would leave that and then go to Quran school after that school and then continue my studies. And so like by the time I was 11, I was like, yeah, no, I'm ear hustling is what I like to call it. I'm like, they talking about you, they talking about. And my mom, like TV, we had the Arab television. She was like, you gonna learn.
So she was so committed, and I kind of have to ask you now this because I'm so curious. I would love to talk to your mom now. Like, bring her on the next
she
episode.
Might love it.
Because what sparks my curiosity so much is the fact that she wasn't born Muslim, right? She learned into it, and she decided in some point of her life to follow Islam. So, did she ever share with you what was the turning point? Was it some sort of discovery, or like what made it? Because it seems it had such a big impact on her, considering that she really went out of her way to make sure that you know all about it, that you speak the language. And so, do you know what was the realization behind?
I can share part of it because she wrote about it in her cookbook, in her book. She wrote about it. But so she had two brothers who were Muslim. So my older siblings' names were Islamic prior to my mom ever becoming Muslim, because that's how much her older and younger brother, like, influence they had on her. She's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna name my first son after you. He's like, well, you want to name it that, you got to put this in front of it because that's what it means, and help and inform her about it. And then my uncle ended up in the hospital, her younger brother, and she was so bad, and she was looking at him and was like, after all these years of them trying to like get her to go to mosque with her and like them and everything, she's like looking at him like, it's only by the will of God that you are alive right now. A week later, she took her shahada. And 2 weeks later, she started like she was like, all right, this is it. I've seen with my eyes what could happen. And so it's been beautiful because, like, when people, my mom's like biggest thing is like, when you have faith, you have faith in whatever you believe in. And for her, it was like, that was it. It was like within a week.
Okay.
It changed.
Well, that's good to know, because I was like, and then she clearly was really a believer, because she continued passing that on the family. I grew up in Montenegro, and I particularly grew up in my small city called Plevlja, where we are kind of almost 50-50 when it comes to Orthodox Christianity, because so I was born as a Christian, but Orthodox, not Catholic, because Christianity has so many different, and then the rest of the city was mostly Muslims. And we actually have, it's a small city, but we have 5 or 6 different mosques in the city. And one with I don't know the word in English, but in my language, we call it minaret.
The minaret. In Arabic, it's called a minaret. So in English, we just say minaret.
It's one of the highest ones in Europe. In my small city, I think actually the highest one in Europe, in the entire Europe. And as a kid, I would go over there, and I had so many friends because we're such a mixed city. I had so many friends who are Muslim, and I just grew up like, when you're a kid and when you're just taught love in between everything, there's never any sort of like questioning anything. And I know my younger brother, till this day, my mom tells this story because we find it really funny. He was very small, maybe he was like 6 or 7, but he already had a best friend. And his best friend, Ado, was Muslim. But he didn't understand even what that means and anything. So somebody somewhere told him Ado is Muslim, right? So he didn't understand what that means. So he came to home and he asked my mom, people are saying that Ado is Muslim, And mom said, yeah, he is. But he's small, So he sat down and he started thinking, and he was silent for a while. And then he said, Mom, how when he looks the same like me? See how kids are so, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we always say that story because it's just, we are the same. And I grew up in that basically raised knowing that it's absolutely the same, like no difference, no any sort of animosity, nothing. We were just really like some of my then later on best friends in life. were Muslims. One of the girls in my high school that like I ran away with once. It's just a hilarious story. But anyway, so we were really close. But then it's not till I started traveling until I went to places, for example, country next to mine, Serbia, where Islam is really not like represented. It's like basically maybe like, I don't know, 5% of the country or something, maybe even less. It's just like very little. I've heard like, like comments I didn't like because I took them personally because I like was thinking that's immediately attack on some of my best friends. And I was just so shocked to learn about the such a big division in some of the countries. I'm telling you all this story because I want to ask you a question. I learned that America, it's not much different than maybe a little better, but similar to the country of Serbia, that it's above mine that I later on lived and experienced, where I learned that there are some people who just like don't like Islam or yeah. So you growing up in America, where again, it's I don't know how, like, is it maybe 20% of America it's Muslim, or maybe even I don't have statistics, but it's majority of Americans are Christians, and some of them can be very deep into the Christianity to attack other religions too, and this came out yesterday. So I don't know if you know, do you know a YouTube channel called Jubilee or something like that? Yeah. So I love the channel. The other day they had a debate in between meat eaters and vegans. So I watched that. Naturally, vegans crushed it. Embarrassing for meat eaters. Anyway, last night, because I watched that video, now they recommended me another video. Last night, it popped up the new video that I posted, and it is American Black Muslims with American Black Christians. And the debate starts, okay? And I'm going to let you know that I couldn't finish it, okay? What really upset me, the first question, I don't know if you saw, it's a middle ground episode. It works that way that they're all further away. And then the statement it's made. And then agreeers step forward and have the conversation, and disagreeers, they stay behind. So it's 4 Black Muslims and 4 Black Christians. And the first question it's asked, and it says, who doesn't follow my religion will go to hell. Okay. All 4 Christians stepped forward, and I was so embarrassed. I was disappointed. I was hurt. I didn't want to watch it more. None of the Muslims did. They all stayed behind. I was like, good job, Muslims. And how embarrassing. Again, this doesn't represent the full Christianity, but those 4 people, all of them agreed on a statement, if you don't follow my religion, you're going to go to hell. And it just made me so upset that I honestly didn't want to even finish the episode. Because I was like, I have nothing to learn here besides hate and toxicity. And I just didn't want to watch it anymore. But you growing up, I'm sure you've experienced things like that. I'm sure people will told you that you will go to hell because, you are Muslim and things like that. So, or you don't follow Christianity. So tell me about some of experiences, how you are learning that America is predominantly Christian, that you're not part of that community. And how did that affect you as a kid?
So it's, again, Philadelphia, I like to say, is its own little microcosm. Because growing up where I grew up, I didn't have that. I had, not saying I didn't have different things after 9/11. It was really bad for us. And stories I can even say, like my mom getting pulled over. And it's a lot of that happened, but that didn't happen as a child. That happened when I was like preteen to teenage years, because the biggest thing that happened as a kid was the different types of Muslims. I was around, Philadelphia is a large refugee population back in the 90s. So I grew up with all types of Muslims, all different colors and ethnic groups and different things. So that was never the thing until I got older. Until I got to see things, until like 6th grade when things were happening in the world. And then it then ended up trickling into Philadelphia. Even in my family, like my dad is two. My dad is one of six, I believe. Yeah, and he's the only. Him and his brother are the only Muslims, and like my family stopped making pork and everything to be able to feed us and stuff like that. Like my mom's sisters knew not to give us Christmas gifts and stuff like that. To like, oh yeah, they're Muslim and she don't play that game. So it was always a respect on that, and so it even who we were around us was a respect. It wasn't until literally high school and college. In college, again, I wore my hijab until I was like 24, and I had someone try to take it off in college.
Like
pull it off.
Physically
Pull it off. And I was like, it was fight or flight for me when it happened. And I remember after it happened and after like, she was like, I was just joking because it was sliding back. And for her, she was like, well, if you don't fully wear it in this one way, then it's not you wearing a hijab. And I was like, no, this is still a hijab. I'm just wearing it. This is how I grew up wearing it. Or this is like my way of wearing it, but it's still there. And she tugged it off. I had to have a whole conversation with her. We thankfully didn't get the university involved, but I was like, yeah, no, that's what you did was wrong. And I spent a lot of that educating what happened when I was in college with people who I was their first Black American Muslim. I was their first one who wore the hijab and like was like just always around and like making sure I prayed and everything. I'm like, oh no, Mecca's Muslim. And it was doing that, like my roommates, the joke is I have 3 older brothers who they're half Jamaican, and so I understood Patois, and Philadelphia has a large Caribbean population, so like I was understanding Patois, and Patois is a dialect that Jamaicans speak of broken English. And her aunt was basically telling her when she moved me into the dorm, telling my friend, you better not get converted by this Muslim girl. And I'm just looking at her like this, like, I understand everything she is saying. And when they left, I was like, I understood everything your aunt told me. She was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, it's okay. But even to this day, she learned so much about the ins and out of my religion that she didn't know because of social media. And at this point, it's like when Facebook is now big and the news is big about what Muslims look like and what they don't. And so it was like really like we're friends to this day. And she's like, yeah, no, Mecca would pray. Mecca did not play. She would go in the stairwell and she would pray if we were being too loud in the room. She would do all this. She told me, she's like, okay, it's not just about pork. Mecca can't have this. She can't eat this. Mecca can't go here. So much so she used to police me more than I would police myself. And be like, we're going to leave you here because you can't come with us. I'm like, what you mean? They're like, because you're not supposed to be around that. And it was such a respect that all my friends in that point in my life grew to Islam because they had respect for Islam because of me. That like they would correct someone in a second. I would get in an Uber and a Uber driver would like say something and my friend would be like, no, she is Muslim too. And you have something else to say? Is it like, are you Muslim? Like, no. She's like, I'm Christian. I'm Baptist. And it's like, it's beautiful to be able to share my faith in a way that help people understand it. And in doing so, like, be able to like teach now they're my nieces and nephews. Oh yeah, no. TT Mecca, Auntie Mecca is Muslim. We're Christian, but we're going to respect what she's doing here. We're respecting that. And now they know about my religion. And so it's just like, they can now tell people like, oh yeah, no, now I have family who's not Muslim, who's not Christian, but they're Muslim and they do this and they do that. And it's so beautiful to see because you're like, I know, even though it wasn't my experience, I know so many kids who had bad experiences with kids about their faith or them looking different or them wearing a scarf. And I was thankful that I didn't have that, but I have people who have. And now the next generation won't always have to do that because of little things that I've said. And it makes me like a little smile on my face.
That's good. You mentioned Christmas and Christmas gifts, and I do want to talk a little bit about holidays. And again, I want to tell you from back where I come from, all the gifts and the tree and the lights, everything to us, it's related to New Year's. Okay. So when I came over here and actually started learning English as a kid and stuff, I learned that tree that my entire life I called Novogodichna Yelka, which means New Year's tree. Now it's called Christmas tree. And I was so confused because I was like, who adopted
Who did that?
who took this to be Christmas thing when it's like for us it's really not. And we give gifts on a 31st. Santa Claus does not. That's nothing to do with religion. Santa Claus comes for the New Year's, right?
Oh, wow.
So even Muslim kids over there love Santa. They have pictures with Santa. They put up trees on because it's not called Christmas tree. It has nothing to do with Christmas for us, because for us Orthodox Christmas is actually January 7th. When already everything finished and then Santa came and the tree, like everything is done. So for us, December 31st, it's when Santa comes. It's not day before Christmas, but for the New Year's Eve, it's when parents will prepare gifts for us and we'll hear the window. My father would slap and then he was like, Santa left, and would come and there was like a huge tons of gifts for us. My parents did a wonderful job making me believe in Santa for like really long time. But all of that for us had nothing to do with religion. Then we would have a Christmas and we would celebrate and we have a totally different type of celebration with a food and different traditions, or like put the money inside of the food and things, and like that would say like, who finds it's going to have a really wealthy year and things like that. But particularly, we don't call them Christmas lights. We call them Novogodichna Svietla, which means New Year's lights. We called it New Year's tree, and Santa and gifts are New Year's gifts. They're not Christmas gifts. So I'm kind of a little disappointed that it's not the case over here, because that's just another excuse for Muslim kids to have more holidays. But anyway, it seems Islam doesn't stay behind when it comes to holidays. And there's a lot of ones. There's two different Eids, right? We call them in my language Bayram. So we have two different Bayrams, right? And for Ramadan, we say Ramazan.
A lot of people say Ramazan because of the D is not pronounced in the language.
That's how we say it in my language, and it's entire month. And for the holy month of Ramadan, people fast and that was very common thing in where I grew up in Montenegro. But I've never done it till I lived in Doha. In one point in my life, I worked for Qatar Airways. And I lived in the capital of Qatar, which is called Doha. And I lived with all the Muslims in the house. And then during the Ramadan, everybody would be fasting, and it would just be really incredibly rude for me to like just eat. So I wouldn't. But I also learned fasting has so many other benefits for the body and everything. So I was like, this is great. It had nothing to do with my religion or anything, but I just loved it. First, I was respecting my friends and like not, like if I'm on a diet and my husband brings cake home, I'm upset. Like, don't do that to me. So I wouldn't want to do that to someone who is fasting and like eating in front of them. So that's one thing I wanted to show respect to people I lived with and shared house, my living space. But what I remember is like when, again, I'm so lucky because I know all of this knowledge that I have, it's from my home country. So I'm lacking so many words in English. But anyway, on top of the minaret, we call it kandili.
Oh,
it's the light.
The lights.
When those lights turn on, we could eat. And those are one of my most beautiful memories in Doha, because it was just really family style. Yeah. Everybody would bring so much food, and it's like everybody would eat together because like everybody's so hungry. And some of my favorite memories. So I do want to ask you now about holidays that you do celebrate. Do you fast during the Ramadan? And tell me a little bit about tradition. Do you guys eat all together when it's over and things like that?
Ramadan is literally my favorite time of the year. And yeah, like you have different people say it Ramadan, like in Urdu is also on Ramadan. And I love it. And the reason why is, again, it's because my mother made it like I started fasting when I was 3 or 4. Not by, I had to. Just make sure. I didn't have to. My mom, I had so many older siblings. So at this point, my parents were divorced. My mom remarried, and I had a lot of older step siblings. And so still a big family. Like my sister and I are the youngest. There's 3 of us who are the youngest. My stepbrother, my sister, and I, and everyone else is teenagers. And so they wake up and we're sharing rooms, and they wake up and you hear people getting ready to pray and eat. And I'm like, Umi, what you making for breakfast? What you making for sahur? Which is the first meal, sahur. Or depending on how you pronounce it in Arabic, it's sahur, but it's pronounced differently. And my mom would make like these huge breakfasts. My mom made everything from scratch at this point. She makes everything from scratch. But she was making donuts, eggs. So she had so many kids to feed. She was like making sandwiches, and we would eat all together. And I'm 3 or 4. I'm probably 4. I think it was happening when I was in kindergarten. And this is when Ramadan was in the winters because it changes every year. And so like, I would be like, I'm gonna be up with my siblings eating. And I'm just sitting next to them eating, and I'm in the line and praying with them. And then I go back to sleep, and my mom wakes me back up to go to school. She's like, I packed you a lunch. And I was like, I'm fasting, Umi. She's like, here's a lunch for you just in case. And at school will be lunchtime. Everyone's like, all right, eating lunch. And this is an Islamic school. So like we're kindergarten. So I was like, I'm fasting for Ramadan. I'm like, really? Well, if you get hungry, your mom has snacks and everything. I'm like, it's okay. And I kept that up and would go home, and I had a lunch bag. My mom would open my lunch bag. You didn't eat anything. I was like, Umi, I told you I was fasting. And she was like I said, she's fasting. I'm not going to even think. And that's how it began for me. And it's the time of the year because like we would go to different masjids, and we would break our fast, iftar. We would
iftar, yes.
Iftar.
Yes.
We would have the minarets.
That was my favorite moment.
The lights. A lot of people don't like. Like lights are really common in Islam, especially lamps during lanterns in the Ramadan. And so the lighting, like the lantern, is something that we do as well. Like so, mom would decorate. We would have decorating the schools or wherever we were at would be decorated, and it was just like I would get to play with all my friends from other places who I didn't get to see after school because I would either go to Islamic school after school, or we would do something else. And so I'm just like, this is so amazing. While the parents are praying, because during Ramadan, you pray every night. And when it'll be like the wee hours of the night and the adults are praying, I'm playing with the kids or my friends from Bangladesh or my friends from Syria or my friend. Like we masjid hopped is what I called it. And it was such a building of community that as an adult, when I got to like college, I was like, this is my favorite time of the year. And it was my first Ramadan away from my family. And that was summer, because that was like, it just started, my senior year of high school was the first time it was in the summer. And so this is like freshman year, we're going into summer, and I'm like, where are the Muslims? So we need to like, I gotta make friends so that we can have Ramadan together. And thankful that I was able to. And I just...
Because it's so beautiful when you share it with
It's
someone.
A community. It's a community. Islam is a community-based religion. And Ramadan is like, literally, it fills me with so much joy to see all the little kids or people experiencing their first Ramadan. I have friends who weren't Muslim, who fasted with me during Ramadan or tried to fast with me during Ramadan. Because I would be cooking while I'm fasting, and they'd be like, "What you want me to taste that food for you? Can I taste?" Yeah, we got taste testers, and they were like, "Well, when are you having this?" I'm like, "We're going to break our fast together." And we had a lot of international students, so I would make iftar for all the international students. And my dorm was always known as the like Mecca always had food. So Mama Mecca was the name that they started calling me, and I would make sure everyone, if they were hungry, if they were anything during Ramadan, iftar, like let's go here for iftar. If you want to make, if I can't make it, we can go out. And I fostered a community while I was in college that really helped me get through Ramadan. Grad school was different because I didn't have anyone when I moved to Chicago. And my first year here, lived in Evanston. And so I met some Muslims there and I did Ramadan with them, but it wasn't a lot the same. And most of this time, actually, the past, I guess, 8 years, most of my Ramadans have been by myself. And the thing that keeps me going, even though I may be doing it alone, is the fact that I know there's millions of people around the world doing the same thing.
Oh.
And that was like, I'm here fasting. Someone in Montenegro's fasting. Someone in Sudan's fasting. Someone in there. And no matter how much money they have or how little, we're all fasting. We're all trying to become a better version of ourselves and get closer to God. And that was the beauty of it for me. And everyone would know, like, Mecca's favorite time of the year is Ramadan. No matter what season it is now. It was hard when it was gray. It's past Ramadan, but it's my favorite. The Eids are beautiful because they're mitzvah, but the actual process of like seeing everyone or my nieces and nephews fasting for the first time and hearing that they fast or they tried to fast for the first time and they didn't. I'm like, it's okay. You are a kid. You don't have to. But I want to. I'm like, but it's beautiful that you tried and you started. And I think that's my favorite holiday. And it's funny because it's a month. So it's not the actual holiday. It's the holy month, but it's my favorite time of the year. And then Eid al-Fitr is so beautiful because in college I would go to for Eid when I never went home. I would always go to Eid in D.C. And there is, because D.C. is the nation capital, you have, I called it UN Masjid, but it's a masjid on the Embassy Row where you saw all different kinds of Muslims. And so I brought my friend who's Muslim but never got to celebrate Ramadan or Eid because her parents were diabetic, so they didn't fast. And so she came with me to Eid one time and she's like, you know all these people? I was like, no. And someone just gave me their baby, like, can you hold my baby while I go fast, while I go pray? I'm like, yeah, here. I'm holding some newborn baby. And she's like, do you know these people? I'm like, no. She was like, but you're just, I was like, this is what we do. This is what it is about Eid. You see all little kids while the parents are praying, running around. And it was just like, I was like, this is what Ramadan means to me. This is what Eid al-Fitr means to me. And it's beautiful when you see it. Like I've been to, because of like I have friends everywhere, I'll take the masjid hop as an adult, but I would go to different cities and celebrate Eid with my friends. I've been to Cali twice to celebrate Eid with my friends over there, my Egyptian family. I've been to Texas to celebrate Eid with my family there. Next trip, I thought next time I was like, I'm gonna have to go abroad and celebrate with my friends in the UK. But it's beautiful because you're like, we're all doing the same thing.
I love that. I could talk forever about this. I just love the traditions, the holidays, like the super exciting things, community coming together, and I just I'll celebrate anything. Like it's just an excuse for me to do. And now, still, when the Eid comes, like because I'm in touch with some of the friends from Montenegro, and I often message. We say Bayram Sharif Mubarak Olsun.
Which is, Mubarak, happy Eid.
Yeah, basically. So I still do that. And it's just, as I said, like I just love when it's celebration. So now I want to move on to other interesting topics because there's so many things, right? So I just really hope in this segment that we took time to talk a little bit more about this. My main goal was for people to learn and to understand. And also, in case we didn't mention, the fast during the Ramadan does not even include water. So it's like not even a water, nothing.
And someone has shirts says not even water, even water.
Exactly. So I hope people get to learn a little bit more about it. But now I want to learn about other aspects of your life. And I did mention in the intro that you are a neuroscientist. And I want to know about that. Can you first tell me, like, I'm gonna, of course, want to know how did you choose that path and what or you needed to do in order to become a neuroscientist. But I want to know, what would you say to someone what neuroscientist is?
The science of the brain.
The science of the brain.
The science of the brain. So I was like, I'm a peculiar kid. I knew what I wanted to be when I was 11. I knew I wanted to be in science by the time I was 5. And my mother again is an educator, but she's an artist before she was educator. She did theater. She was a theater kid. She did dance and like all that. So she was like, science. I didn't even like statistics when I was in grad school. What is this? And so for her way, once she realized, like, there's a picture of me, and she'll probably send it to me, a picture of me digging. So at the museum that they had, like the Franklin Institute, because Philadelphia has a lot of museums. So the Franklin Institute, you see me digging for dinosaur bones in like this little thing. I'm like 3 or 4, probably 3 because of how small I was. And all the other kids, my older siblings, they're all running amok somewhere else. And I'm just cleaning off and looking at the bones. And I'm just meticulously putting it down and just going, and literally. And my mom's looking like, she's a little different from the rest of them. Okay, you know, there's something different over here. And so as I got older, my mom really was like, okay, so she's really into STEM. I was like, I don't know how to facilitate this. So my mom knew that art had science in it. She's like, some art has it. So she introduced art to me as a way for me to understand science. And then whoever she knew that was in science, she was like, Mecca likes math. She likes this. How do we get her into this point? And so she used her network to help me really understand why I liked science. So much so, like, I transferred from private to public school when I was about 15. My 15th birthday, right after then. And my mom was like, we got to get her a summer internship because she's about to be in high school. She's about to be in college. She's next year's. She loves science. And she's been saying she wanted to do physics since she was 11. And everyone's like, what? And I was like, yes, I want to be a physicist. So even when I was like, I have to find it something. When I was like 10, I sat my mom down. I was like, Umi, I'm gonna be a scientist. She's like, okay. Do you know what kind? I was like, but I'm gonna be a scientist. She's like, well, do some research and let me know. And our house was filled with books. Books. We had like floor seating, like we had cushions on the floor. So we would literally be sitting there and just books. So I would go to the library or I would look in the books and I'm like, okay, what type of science? I don't like this one. I don't like chemistry. This seems interesting, but I don't think I'm gonna like this. Biology, no, that's not for me. And then I was like, physics, that's interesting. And then I looked more into it and I was like, wow, I'll be able to, like, how I saw physics as a kid, I'm like, I can blend my art with my science, and that's physics. I'm gonna do that. And 11, I remember going into school and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be a physicist. They're like, Mecca, no, you're not. Mom was like, don't tell her no. She knows exactly what she wants to do. I was like, I'm gonna be a physicist. And I kept that up. Kept it up. 16, I worked in my first lab. I actually was there all year round because I got to stay during the year because they had funding. And it was an olfactory sense lab. So they studied the sensory system. And it was the sense of smell. And I got to work on creating this test, a universal test, smell test for anyone in the world. And my boss, Dr. Dalton, she was amazing. She could travel the world. She would come back from Nepal. She was like, I was in Nepal, here you go. I was like, I want to be like you. I want to run my own lab and do this, but I don't want to do this. So I think physics is going to be it. And then my grandmother passed away. I was really close to both my grandmothers. My mom being a single mom, working mom's like half days we would stop by. She would have it. My grandmother would watch us. My Mama J, my dad's mom, would watch us as a kid. Well, my mom made Hajj in the 90s. My dad's mom watched us. And so, like, I was really close to my grandmothers. So it was junior year. My mom was about to get her PhD. Like she just submitted her dissertation, and my grandmother passed away a week after I turned 16. And I remember sitting there like, what was it? Like we knew she had dementia, but we didn't know what was happening. And we found out it was Alzheimer's disease. And so being like 16, coming to terms with that, and I'm like, I'm going to figure out what this is. Let's look into it. And I couldn't find a real answer as to what it was. And this is like 2009, right? So I'm like, what is Alzheimer's disease? Oh, it's just dementia. Okay, what causes that? Oh, it's just, I'm like, that's not a good enough answer for me. You're not telling me the mechanisms behind it. I'm going to do this. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to study this. I want to have an answer for when someone else's grandmother, grandfather, loved one has this, they can have a better answer than just, oh, their body forgot. Like, what? And so I was 16. I was like, this is what we're going to do. But the thing is, neuroscience wasn't a major for undergrad, for your bachelor's. So I was like, there was only 2 universities that had it as a major. And I was like, all right, I got waitlisted. And I applied to Howard for physics. And I was like, I was a brat. I was so upset. I was like, I got waitlisted. Oh, dramatic. And I was like, I don't care where I go. Mom was like, well, you're going to go to Howard. Because at that point, my older sister went to Howard in the 90s. My aunt went to Howard. My brother was graduating that same year that I was going to be coming in. Cousins went to the med school. Like Howard was in my family. And it was a school my mom wanted to go to before she had my sister. So I was like, fine. And I got my degrees in physics, and it was the best experience because the physics department was small. I was the only woman to graduate in my department my year.
Oh, wow.
I was the only one that stuck out. So we started with the largest class they ever had, which was 7 at the time. And I was one of 2. It was me and one other person who stuck it out. The rest of it. And I kept it up. And I was...
How many years did you graduate?
4.
4 years.
I graduated 4 years, and I was double major up until my last semester. And I didn't have any access to learn more about the brain, except for like readings and writings and writing essays. And I became an athletic trainer in college. So athletic trainers, what they do on sports teams, if you've ever seen someone while you're watching a sports team that's running to grab them water or doing the check of the body check of the athlete, that's what I did in undergrad. So I traveled with our football team, our men's basketball team, and our women's lacrosse team. Women's lacrosse and men's basketball were my personal sports that I traveled with by myself. And within that, I'm like, yeah, I really am interested in the brain, because when you're athletic trainer, you see a lot of people who get concussions. And you're like, how
does it work?
How can that something so small affect something so big? Even so much so that my departmental honors paper for my senior honors, I wrote about the brain. And it was really cool because it's like, oh, wow, this is really something that no one really generationally, it's like ancient times did not consider the brain as something important. I think it was Aristotle who said the brain was a thermostat for the body. The ancient Egyptians would discarded the brain, whereas in the other organs they kept and preserved for them to take into the afterlife. And the brain was like, oh, well, you gone. And it was just like, we are just now learning about what it is and the connections. And I'm like, I want to learn this. And I kept it up. And I got my master's in physics. However, I was in a neuroscience lab. So I studied Alzheimer's disease in my master's. And from there,
So how many years is that? After 4 years, what's happening then?
So after 4 years, I went back to, I didn't have a break. I do not recommend anyone ever doing that. I kept on going. So I graduated in May. I taught that summer and taught kids and everything. And then that fall, I moved to Chicago, September 1st, and I started school September 21st, 2014 in physics at Northwestern. And that was a really hard time. And I had went on medical leave and came back. And I finished that degree in 3 years total.
So first 4 years, that's why I want to understand how you got to. So first years and 3 more
Did
years.
3 more years.
And is that it?
Oh, no, because now I work. Now I'm in a lab.
No, but for education,
for
you
traditional
to get
education, yeah. For
So
traditional,
4 years of college,
Yes.
and then additional 3 years
Yes.
of like a master and
Yes.
doctorate or whatever that it's called.
for a master's, and then I started working to take a break before going back to school, which is where I'm going to be going in the next couple of years.
Oh, so you want to go back?
I'm going back.
For what? What is the next?
MD. I was going to do an MD PhD, which is like a dual degree where you get your MD, you become a doctor of medicine and a doctor of philosophy. I'm just going to do a doctor of medicine because I have so much. I spent this past 7 years running a lab and doing all the science that is equivalent to a PhD in terms of what I've learned, that it would be more beneficial for me to get the MD and where I plan to do trauma. Plan to be a trauma surgeon.
Okay. You mentioned you work now. What is your work?
So I run a lab where we study traumatic brain injury and inflammation, and there's many mechanisms behind it. And it's really interesting because we're closing a chapter, so I will be transitioning to a different lab in February. And so that will be just a sepsis lab and trauma and burn victims, which is also really good research. And I've learned so much about the brain that I'm like, you can hang it up.
I know nothing about
the brain is so amazing. Even the type of connections, like even relearning, doesn't take you that much long. It doesn't take the brain that long to create new pathways. It takes even less for them to be destroyed in terms of injury. Injury can like obliterate portions of your brain. So I like to tell people, I'm like, the microglia, which is my favorite cell, it's my favorite. It's the brain's residential immune cell. And I like to tell people, think of it like you're at a club and you have an overzealous bouncer. And everyone who's been to a club has seen that one bouncer who's chill and the other one who's just on the 1,000. So the chill bouncer is the microglia in its residential state. It just be chilling. Be like, oh, what's up? Let me look at the ID. All right, you good. You good. You not good. Just come on out. Get out of the line. Like that's what it is. It monitors and it looks at, and it looks like nothing. It's like an amoeba. So it's like a circle, just like policing the brain. But after injury, that bad boy like, all right, who are you? Get out of there. And becomes like pulling someone out the club type of level. But after consistently having injuries to your brain, concussions, CTE, which is chronic, which also lots of people, CTE reminds people, I'm not going to even say the full name, but it's like when people are athletes. So they call it like when a lot of football players get it. A lot of people know CTE from that. Your brain is like the overzealous bouncer, the bouncer who just keeps on going. It's just like, let me clean everything. And when it's cleaning everything that's good and bad. So it leaves the brain with a lot of holes, just empty space. And what happens is when that happens, your brain creates new pathways to fix that, to compensate for it, but it doesn't go back. So side effects of that are slurred speech can be, motor disabilities can form from that. You can even affect your gut.
Oh, wow.
It's so many things are affected by just one injury to the brain. Affects your entire body. And so, although I didn't get to spend as much time learning about Alzheimer's disease, I did only for a few years, I did learn so much about the brain in my time in the past decade I've been in Chicago. And it's been beautiful because just like the brain is so, it's always going to be my favorite organ because it's the least studied in terms of, if we think of time. We've learned about the heart since the ancient Egyptians were doing open heart surgeries. right? So like this organ though we have nothing about, because if you look at a brain, it's not doing nothing. It's gray. It's the heart. It moves. The spleen, the liver.
I did not know that the brain was gray.
Yeah, it's nothing there. It's not moving. So like if you think about like ancient times, they are like performing, like they're clearing up someone's body, like mummifying them, and they're like, this ain't doing nothing. Get rid of it. A heart will still be pumping after a body is gone. Your liver, your spleen, your intestines, all of your organs are still, they're muscles, most of them are still moving as if something was, you're alive. It's your brain that has all the power in terms of turning it on and off. And so it's been beautiful to learn it. And I'm really excited to learn what's next. So like the best thing about science is that I'm always learning. And I was like, you're going back to school again. It's going to take so much longer. I was like, time has no meaning when it comes to being able to help someone. And that's my purpose in this world, is to make sure I create a safe space for people to feel loved and like they can learn and they could be themselves. And so my goal is to, in 15 years, when we talk like, well, what you doing now, Mecca? I'm like, I got my lab up and running. We are studying whatever, but it's a lab where you can study and you can be you, and you don't have to ever compromise.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to show you my Prenuvo results. Have you heard of Prenuvo?
Yes, I saw your video. How was it?
Prenuvo, it's a full body scan. Where you go for like an hour. They give you a TV show that you can watch, because there's no way I could resist to 1 hour to not move at all.
You didn't go to sleep?
But they gave you sort of sunglasses that are actually a mirror, and it's reflecting a TV behind you. For first 30 seconds, you're very well aware that it's a mirror reflection. But after that, you're so deep into the show and that you're just watching. And it's when it's over, couple days later, you will receive the full results of your entire body. But what I find so funny for me, I was so grateful to know. It just gave me such a new energy when I was like, I know I'm so healthy. You know, my heart was amazing, my lungs, kidneys, everything. But they also show you some interesting findings. Like, for example, like I got, I knew actually this, like my entire life, I have kind of my nose going on this side, even from outside physically, but from inside, it's even more. I have like a big deviation, but they said it's like a very physical condition, so there's nothing to do. But what I found so hilarious is they said there was finding on my brain. And I was like, what is this? Because it said it's a minor finding, no action, it's needed and everything. But then after you finish the Prenuvo, they schedule you a professional to go over results with you. So he went over results with me, and he basically said, it's just basically abnormal empty space in your brain, that it's like not common. But he said, this is something you had when you were formed in your mother's womb. Like before you were even born, you had this, you were born with it. There's no likeliness that this will ever change. It's just basically a physical condition on. But I found it so funny. I was like, oh, I have an empty brain, you know? So
like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. I should show you my Prenuvo results for
that'd be cool.
For you to check it out, because yeah, besides those two things, there were like no any other findings, and those two are also physical. It's like nothing that is like affecting me. But I found it so funny. And I was like telling people, turns out I have an empty brain. But I do want to ask you something, because I know nothing about the brain, but something that I always think about is memories. You see, I want to ask you about two things. I want to ask you about selective memory, because I totally have it. Okay. And I want to ask you about false memories. The things that we can vividly remember that like never happened. Like how is that possible?
Because children's imaginations. So I love memories. Because that's the hippocampus. A lot of times your long-term memories are stored there. But when it comes to memories, you have your long-term memories and your short-term memories, and they go to different parts in your brain. Like think about different cabinets. Like your spice cabinet are the ones you use every day. Like I have this in here because I use this every day. I got my dehydrated mushrooms. I have this. But then you have somewhere up on the top shelf the things that you don't use everywhere. Like I have tarragon in my cabinet. Do I use tarragon every day? No. Do I use saffron? No. But it's there. And so that's where the different things get shoved. So your long-term memory, everything, childhood, all that gets put all the way in the back. And your short-term memory is a little bit more accessible. And so what happens oftentimes when people have like a lot of this, like it's a little bit of psychology as well as, which is why I love neuroscience. Neuroscience is such an interdisciplinary field because the brain is everything. And so a lot of that comes from movies. A lot of times people watch movies and then they can store the movie in it and they can't differentiate the two because they watched it when they were younger. Like, didn't we do this? No, we watched this movie together. This looks like because of that. Sometimes it's, what is it called? When the collective remembers something different. I forgot the name of the type of effect that it's called. But when the collective all remember something different, it's because oftentimes like it could be a mispronunciation that's common in different regions. It could be everyone watched a similar show growing up. And so all that can play a role in how your brain forms memories and how they store memories. If something was traumatic, your brain's going to remember it differently than something that was calm. A lot of times the trauma your brain stores it stores in a similar region, but it stores it. And you remember that stronger than you remember something else. So like having emotions, and this is why I love the movie Inside Out. It was such a way for you to explain that to children of how your brain.
Yeah, I've seen the movie. Yeah,
how your brain stores. I mean, it's a little bit funnier, but how your brain actually categorizes memories. That's literally what happens. Traumatic memories.
Oh, I'm sure that movie had some neuroscientists helping.
It had to. I know it didn't have me, but you know.
Yeah, I know, right? They should.
Pixar.
But tell me about selective memories. Like, where do I find my power to forget things I don't like, and why do I do that?
It could be that it triggered something for you. So you have your emotions that are attached to your memories, like your joy, your happiness, all that stuff, right? If something was like, I don't like this at all, and your body ends up having a reaction to it, an adverse reaction, like you get angry, you get heated, your mind might be like, yeah, let's get rid of this. We don't need this here.
Yeah, probably.
And also when we get older, we do lose our ability to have a lot more, our short-term memory gets reduced, which is why like a lot of people say, look, eat walnuts, or in a lot of non-Western Eastern areas, you eat fruits and vegetables and nuts that reflect the shape of the brain or the object you want to get better. Which is why people like eat a lot of walnuts. Fun fact, they have a lot of omega-3s, right? But help with your memory as a way of like as a way to help strengthen your ability.
Is there any other foods that like you recommend as a neuroscientist to help the?
This is the yoga in me coming out then. Nuts. I eat a lot of. If you are not allergic to nuts, walnuts are really great.
Walnuts. Okay.
Walnuts are really great. Flaxseed. You basically want to get back into like your what are those called? The goji berries as well. That's good for antioxidants, but it also helps with detoxing your body, which will then also impact your brain. But first thing off my head is it's nuts. It's legumes.
So they support brain health. Oh, I love that. I do want to ask you more about food because like I don't want to running out of time. Because I actually met you through Kill My Name. Yeah. We followed each other on Instagram. And then for the first time ever, I met you inside of Kill My Name. And we shared a lovely a vegan meal together. So I was wondering, I had no idea. Are you vegan yourself?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I've been vegan it'll be 6 years on February 1st.
Oh wow.
And I'm still thinking about them taquinos. Those were so good.
Oh my God.
I ordered them like 4 times.
Well, that's thank you. I'm gonna have to get you some taquinos. But tell me, what was your reason for veganism?
I was sick. I was when I moved here, I made everything from scratch. And my mom always brought me halal meat, so I never had to buy produce in terms of meat or any of that. And then I found myself every quarter in the ER. And that's scary because I'm like, all my life, I mean, I've been bigger than everybody, but I've always been healthy. And I'm 21, 22, 23 in the ER, like not in there, like in the ER, not because of my asthma, but because of something's wrong with my stomach. And the doctors would just be like, all right, yeah, it's just chronic gastroenteritis, which just means chronic inflammation in the gut. Well, if I'm having this for 3-4 months at a time, what is causing it? I'm cooking everything from scratch again. And I had to be like, okay, let's eliminate stuff. And I was like, all right, you're only going to get, if you're going to eat meat, you're only going to get like from Whole Foods. I'm on a grassroots budget. I can't be getting this. Like, this is not economically sound. So I was just doing that. And I was like, all right, I can't get fresh fish like I can get it from the fisherman. I couldn't do that. I was like, Fun fact, in college though, I did watch a lot of like the documentary. What was the documentary? Sick and Nearly Dying, which is why I knew about juicing. And I was like, okay, we're going to try juicing again to see if that helps. And it did help calm my stomach. And so I was like, all right. By the time I was 25, I already given up mostly dairy. I would eat like ice cream and only certain cheeses. But if it was meat, I really just only ate. If I ate meat in my food, it was going to be from Whole Foods. Or like I would like scour the city to find.
But that still didn't help.
It still didn't help. And I was, I started doing meatless Mondays with my little brother when he was in visiting. And I was like, yes, meatless Mondays, come on. And that helps so much. I'm like, you know what? You stopped eating this. You stopped doing this. What if you just became vegan? And I woke up February 1st and I was like, we're just going to do this. Now I had a fridge full of food that wasn't. So I told my friends, like, whoever doesn't eat meat, eat meat. Come grab this. I'm just going to be vegan. And this is in 2018, 2019. And I'm like, no one believed that I would be vegan this long. Like people I worked with are like, you were just talking about making a brisket. I was like, yeah, but I'm be vegan. And I stuck with it and it helped so much with my stomach. But then I started doing more. It's like, well, how are you going to stay vegan? I was like, possibly, because like, look at what we're doing to the world.
I know, right? I'm going to ask you about that, but I do want to focus on health first because that was your main reason.
That was my main reason.
And you said you were experiencing every couple of months going to ER and you found that not normal. You went vegan February 1st, 2019. And what are the changes? Like, are you now every 3 months in an ER?
No, I actually haven't been to the ER in this whole time.
In the last 6 years?
Yeah, no, the only time I went to the ER.
Vegan. Go vegan, people. You hear this.
I've been trying to get my mama to do it, but you know. What happened was I've only been in the ER for asthma, and that was one other time. I have not had, it's been so good. And a lot of things when I started cutting and eliminating things, I realized it was a lot of processed food. That when having the access from my mother getting me the food and all the stuff was a little bit different, but the processed meat, like everything goes through some type of process. And I'm like, well, what are we doing to the animals?
Genesis, like, it's weird.
And they bred that, like, it was so bad. And my body was so sensitive that I felt all of that. I like, people were like, oh, you're sick. I was like, no, I was so sick that I went on medical leave. It was not just, oh yeah, no, stomach pain here. It's like, no, I can't walk. Everything hurts. And so being vegan now, I was like, I run, I weight lift heavy, I do all this stuff. And people are like, well, you're vegan, you can't do it. I'm like, I weight lift heavy. I was able to body recomposition my body while being vegan. I'm able to do all this stuff and I feel good. Like anytime I feel groggy, if anything, it's because I'm eating something that's heavily processed, which I don't eat. And that was it. It's like, I can immediately now tell like, oh, no. I ate something. It was either cross-contaminated or it's heavily processed, and I can't do that. My body can't break it down.
Yeah. We sadly in America mostly don't have any sort of meat that it's not heavily processed.
No.
And when I also mean by that, it's like, those expressions, oh, the grass fed and this and that, it's always filled with antibiotics and hormones and like all of these awful things. It's affecting body so much. Like I have also family members who went vegan because they're literally dying and woke up from death and got a second chance at life because they decided to stop just eating rotting dead bodies. It's awful. But anyway, it's not just about health for me. Like health was just like a bonus because I started because of your second reason. I was like, look what we are doing to the world. I wanna ask you, like, how did you jump on this board? Because we complimented each other shoes when we sit over here. I said they're vegan, and you said mine are vegan too. So it's like now it seems like you're not just vegan for your health and for the food, but you don't use leather or like fur or cosmetics. Okay.
So like if I have leather, it's often from what I've had for years.
Yeah.
I'm very sustainable as well. Like I try not to buy anything that's fast fashion often. Like sometimes I get some stuff from certain things. I've been in the past like 2-3 years, been very cognizant of where I buy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that comes from the fact that science is and I tell people, science is a heavily research based in animal research, a lot of it, unfortunately. And when you're so amongst that, you're like, I'm not going to cry. How can you not feel?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when you're in it so much and you see it, you're like, how can you not feel? How can you not feel for these organisms? And that was when I was like, no, I have to keep this up. Like, I remember I was dating someone and I was talking to them and they're like, you're crying. I was like, because of this, like, I'm doing this and I understand what the benefits, but like, why is another way? And I was like, all right, so we're just going to make sure that whatever I can do, I am able to make sure that I am giving back to the world and I'm not using too much of it. I'm shopping sustainably. I'm making sure that whatever my products that I put in my body, even though they're vegan or even though they're plant-based, are they actually ethically sourced? Mm-hmm. Are they vegan in that sense of not just have a vegan stamp on it, but where was this sourced from? Where can I buy from? And that was been really where the past I'm 32, so past 3-4 years. And I was like, all right. Even so, my friends were like, oh, we gotta go to the special store. I was like, yes, we're gonna go to the local special store and support them, and they will have what I need. Mm-hmm. Because it's so many layers to what's happening to the world. Mm-hmm. You have locally, like I will try to go to the farmer's market whenever they're in season and talk to the farmers and get my fruits in there. Mm-hmm. And if I get fruit, I'm freezing them for the summer for later. And I was like, I was canning fruit. I was doing all that. I was like, I'm going to try my hardest because even honey, y'all, the things that they would,
yeah.
You learn, you're like, how can I unlearn this?
Yeah, exactly. That's when I'm the biggest confused when I heard from people like, oh, I was vegan and now I'm not anymore. I was like, you confuse me because you cannot unlearn everything that you know. Mm-hmm. Also, and I want to ask you about this, the connection with animals that one builds once you go vegan, it's just unbreakable bond.
It really is.
I can never again participate in supporting their slaughter and their throats being cut. And I just cannot. People start with like, oh, well, we can support the farms and like humane slaughter. I was like, did you just hurt yourself when you said humane and slaughter? They cannot coexist. Like simply, it's not possible. There is no humane way to kill someone who doesn't want to die. Absolutely doesn't exist. Yeah. Like whoever wants to prove me wrong, oh yeah, like how? Like I don't want to die and you kill me. Like there's nothing humane about it. So there's that humane slaughter does not exist. So I want to ask you in that sense, like, do you feel deeper connection with animals? Like, and just how I feel about them?
No, I do. Which is actually interesting. I feel like I started getting a deeper connection before I was vegan, and then it just happenstance. Like I have a better one, but like even so much as like with science, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like I will take myself out of the equation if I have to. And that's been beautiful to be able to like be a little bit further out where you don't have to do anything
that you don't want to.
You don't want to do, and it's crazy because like even my friends, they have dogs. I'm allergic to so many things. My friends have all animals, and even like, are you being mean to the dog? Like, aren't you being mean to him? I'm like, no, I just talk to him sternly. But no, I've always been that way though. I've always felt for animals. My earlier memory is like, I'm allergic to cats. My mom's allergic to cats. My brother's allergic to cats. I from when I was 5 years old, and there was freezing cold in winter in Philadelphia. My brother and I were walking to McDonald's to grab like an ice cream cone or something. We had some fish fillet or something. And I heard something meowing. And my brother was like, I hear something. He's like, no, come on, Mecca, it's cold. Let's keep walking. I was like, I hear something. And like I said earlier, I was a stubborn kid. I said there's something going on. And we found a kitten. It was like mewing. And he's like, well, when we get back, we'll look at it and we'll call people. We got back. Once we walked back in the house, I was bawling because I was like, you said we can take the cat home. It's like, we're allergic. I don't care. And I was literally bawling. And my mom had to call someone and they had to show me that the kitten was okay before I was okay. And it's the same thing. It's like, I feel like
compassion is beautiful.
But it's like, it's that I'm blessed that like that didn't change as me being an adult, right? I care for everything. And I'm blessed that I still be able to hold on to that even when I'm allergic or my friend's dog don't like me, or no, that doesn't like me. He's just mean. It's okay. He's a grumpy old man. But yeah, it's just like being able to have that care, understanding when it comes to life. And I feel like it's also my mom, like, I know that all life has a purpose, and feeling the beauty in that has just been able to, I think being vegan has helped me make it easier. Like I haven't brought new things in forever. And then recently I'm like, okay, what am I buying new shoes? Okay, where am I buying? What am I buying? I was like, okay, I'm making sure that I don't properly buy leather. I'm making sure that anything that I buy, it's sustainable. I'm making sure that anything that I buy, anything that I touch is not doing harm. And it's been harder than I thought it would be.
Oh yeah, no, it's almost impossible for us to not cause any harm just by existing.
By existing, very
true. By existing, we cause harm. But the thing is, like, there is certain things that like are not negotiable for me. Like I'll never ever again be a reason that, you know, somebody's getting slaughtered and in fear and in pain. And it's just unnecessary harm. Whatever I can avoid, I forever will. It's just the goal. But again, veganism made me more compassionate. As you say, I always loved in animals. All kids do. But veganism is definitely something that made me a more compassionate person. Mecca, I cannot believe it's hour and a half already. Okay, like it's insane that we're running out of time.
We are.
And then before we do, listen, we have so much more to talk about. Like there's so many topics that I didn't even touch, but I'll leave them for some other time because you and I will continue this conversation. But I do want to basically for the end ask for you to, because we didn't talk about yoga. We didn't talk about so many things. So, you know, we have a minute. Okay. Yeah, there's your camera. Go in a minute, tell them everything that you do, how people can connect with you. And, you know, just how can we learn even more? Because we've learned so much today.
So, like you said, I am a little bit of everything. So I'm the Eclectic Jawn, JAWN, on all social media platforms, even on YouTube. And I do yoga, I do contortion, I do body positivity and body neutrality more so. And that's on all platforms.
That's a topic I wish we touched more, but other time.
Let's just, rain check it.
Exactly.
But yeah, you can find me on all platforms, and
They can follow you
and
and
you can
learn
follow
more
me and
about
learn
this.
more.
Yeah.
Because I talk about everything.
Because I've seen you lifting heavy.
Oh yeah, I love lifting heavy.
I love that.
I like
love
being
so inspiring.
strong.
Your social media page is very inspiring. People definitely need to check it out. Thank you so much
Thank you for having
taking
me.
the time to, just wonderful conversation. I really, really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ooh, my goal of the day was to learn, and I really think we've learned so much today. We learned about different religions and just an open mind, more about Islam, about traditions, about Ramadan. We learned so much about our brains that we didn't know. And for the end, we learned even more about veganism. So I would say my goal of learning in this year is already accomplishing because I've learned so much in the last 90 minutes. I hope you did too. And I already cannot wait to see you with some other extraordinary stories. And it's always, even in this year, remember that if people ever tell you that you are too much, you'll tell them to go and find less. I love you.